All right, so we're live. All right, all right, man. So it's been a while, Tom. When was the last time we saw each other? A long time ago, man. Wasn't it?
Yep. Before COVID.
Yeah, before COVID. Um, Man, you're like a YouTube star now.
I mean, it was my job before I started. Before I went to the philosophy club, it was my job.
Yeah. Um, I think we talked when you first started doing it. When was that exactly?
Uh, well, I started like 3 years ago or something like that. Two something years ago.
Yeah, I think when we met and we talked about it, I think you had just started actually. Maybe not just started, but I think you had been doing it for like 6 months or something like that, maybe even less than that. Because I remember it was the like you, yeah, you had started accumulating some fans and stuff like that, but it's sort of the beginning still. Um, remember, we went with Showbig to no, it wasn't the lake, it was the river by the University of Minnesota, and we
I
kind
think
of
I
talked.
still had like 2 to 3,000 subs by then.
It was that many. Oh, wait a second. The connection is kind of crappy. So how like what
You back?
why
Yeah.
so why did you decide to start doing that? What was the inspiration?
Um,
And by the
I
way, I mean, I'm asking you
was.
this. By the way, I'm asking you this stuff. If you want to talk about something else, go ahead. I don't want you to be bored. I'm just curious, really, because I don't think we
Uh,
ever actually discussed this.
yeah, I was. I asked out a bunch of philosophers to go to coffee shops to have conversations about philosophy, and I was recording the conversations and uploaded them to my YouTube channel just to help remember them, and started to gain a following from doing that pretty much.
Okay, so you would actually go to a coffee shop, and how would you record it with a cell phone?
Yeah, just a camera.
Just a camera.
Yep, just any recording device I had on me.
So what was the idea? You just wanted to have interesting conversations, or did you have like a model?
Uh, I was researching philosophy as a way to try to overcome my depression, and I hoped that I would gotten good enough at it that I could use the knowledge to do something to make some progress. So I was just testing my knowledge pretty much to see if I was good enough at it to make any real progress. And that was just talking to professors was just a good way to test my ideas.
So how did you get so you're actually talking to professors? Were they professors from the University of Minnesota at that point?
No, it was mostly Christian colleges like Northwestern, St. Thomas, St. Olaf.
And you're only talking because I know you're particularly interested in religion, right? That's your specialty. Is that is that a fair characterization, or not really?
You cut out. Yeah, religion was sort of my area. It was my goal. I wrote an epistemology and model of morality, and I contrasted it with religious belief because it just touched on all the correct topics to uh, bring up all the points of my epistemology. So it wasn't really that religion was my focus. It was just that it happened to be related to all the same topics that I'm interested in my epistemology.
Because it dealt with some morality so much. Was that it?
Well, morality and what qualifies as good evidence. How do you differentiate imagination from reality? Is testimony, intuition, good evidence? What is the why is empirical evidence so important? All the basic questions of epistemology are touched upon in religious belief.
Okay. So you're getting, and how did you get these professors to talk to you and actually go to a coffee shop, sit down with you? I mean, because that's, like they didn't know you, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I just emailed them. I just sent them an email, said, "Hey, professor, I've been researching this so and so. Would you mind having a conversation?" And they just said, "We're gracious enough to say, sure, let's go out and have coffee and chat." Because normally I go to the coffee shops right next to their colleges, and when they're on their lunch break or whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, they just were really kind people who said they were willing to chat with me. I was just really lucky to meet kind professors willing to give their time to someone who was a nobody essentially.
Were they freaked out when you started recording the conversation?
No, I told them beforehand.
And they were cool with it.
I would, yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's really nice of them. I wouldn't think that, these professors would just meet with someone in a coffee shop and just, like out of nowhere, without a previous contact. I mean, not counting the emails, obviously, but someone introducing you or something like that. So it's really cool that they did that.
Yep. That's kind of what I was thinking too. Like you think professors are just these special people who are just off limits, but really nope, you can just anybody can email them and ask the chat and they're usually pretty willing.
Hmm. That's pretty cool.
Just regular people like everybody else.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And then how did you start having like all that success? Because I've been doing this for a while. I mean, I don't do the same thing you do. I mean, I've just kind of like experimenting with stuff on YouTube, but trying to like build a channel and all that. um and it's hard, man, and I don't think a lot of people can have success on YouTube. I mean, it's difficult to amass a following and interest, and like I don't even know how videos get promoted. I mean, how was it just like a natural thing that people started watching your videos?
No, like for the first year, I had like a few hundred views or maybe 1,000 on max on my most videos, but it took off when another big YouTuber with 5,000 subs or something started to promote me. He brought me on his channel and showed off my stuff to his audience, and since we had a very similar style and talking points, then his audience started to join or watch my videos, join my subscriber base, and which then helped algorithm to grow. And that's how you grow on YouTube, is that you interest in similar content, and then their audience will join your audience, and you grow that way. Essentially, that's the only way to get noticed on YouTube for the most part.
Okay, so basically someone like is almost like being endorsed by someone in a way,
Yep.
I guess. Okay, yeah, I gotta are you still like are you still friends with that person, or do you still have a good relationship with that guy?
Yeah, he's still one of my YouTube buddies. Now he's up to like 12,000. Pine Creek is his YouTube channel. So he's
Pine
got
Creek.
about
Yeah, I'll check it out.
almost almost twice as many as me, I guess.
Yeah, and he also talks about atheism and religion, morality, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Debunking religious people. He has a few famous analogies. And he started the Jesus drowns babies meme, which was great.
Jesus drowns me. What's that?
In the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament drowned the entire world, which would include babies. And in Trinitarianism, one of the religious beliefs is that God is fully Jesus and fully the Holy Spirit. Therefore, if God does it, Jesus does it. So, since God drowned everyone in the global flood, Jesus did too. So, Jesus drowned babies.
And that became like a famous internet meme
Yeah, for the atheists, pretty
for the
much.
atheists.
It's a good argument against Christianity because they think Jesus is this perfect moral being, but the Old Testament God not so much. But if they're the same, well then anything the God does, Jesus does too.
After after all these conversations, because you've had so many conversations about atheism and religion, would you say, like, have you changed your mind about this when you set out to do this? So you said about 3 years ago. uh do you think, have you changed your mind, like, considerably, or more or less it's you're kind of like in the same place in terms of what you believe is the truth?
I mean, I guess I'm the same. I mean, I've improved my position, made it stronger since then, but nothing's really changed except maybe adopting a stronger view on morality. But essentially, my position has been the same, just been improving my arguments, changing on some things, some philosophical concepts I hadn't heard before, and was taught them by philosophers I chatted with. So there have been some changes, but not anything substantial about my position.
So uh you're I do you do people read this book that you wrote, the model? Do you sell it?
No, it's not. I haven't found a publisher for it yet. I have a publisher for my morality book, but it's supposed to come out by the end of this year sometime. But I don't have any published books yet because I didn't want to self-publish. I want to have a publisher
Yeah.
because it's taken more seriously in academia, which is the goal, not just to publish it.
Wow, I mean, congratulations. I didn't know you had this book coming out sometime this year. That's awesome, man.
Thanks.
So are you really happy about that? I imagine.
Sort of, I guess. I mean, for me, it's just another thing to give me hope, but it's not really what matters to me in life. So it's sort of, but sort of not.
I guess it's nice to get some recognition, right?
Sure.
I mean, I imagine. I don't know. Um, Man, and like last night I was watching you play Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So are you a big fan of those games? Because I'm a huge fan
The
of
Assassin's
those
Creed
games.
games, no, I don't. No, I don't. I think they're
No.
kind of average. I think Odyssey was just terrible. I hated Odyssey. It was so boring. Valhalla's pretty good. I do like Valhalla, but they're mostly just something to do in the spare time. I'm a big fan of hack and slash games, Darksiders, Ninja Gaiden. Those games are really good. Um, but yeah, the Assassin's Creed games are kind of just average.
Is that something you do every Sunday? I guess, is that like just stream games and talk about these issues with your fans?
Yeah, that's my Sunday Q&A stream.
So you play
My one
video
of one of
games and
my Discord guys suggested it.
so
What?
you play video games and you answer questions.
Yep, pretty much.
How's that going? I mean, when I joined, I mean, it was really popular. I mean, there were lots of people there.
Oh yeah, you were in there. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely pretty popular. I mean, it's
yeah. I
not
posted
as
as the
big as my
philosophy.
YouTube channel because it's.
Yeah, I posted as the
Oh
philosophy
yeah,
plug.
cool.
Yeah, and you even replied. You said, "Yeah," because I said, I'm playing Syndicate and Unity. I really like those games, and he said, "Yeah, Syndicate is really great."
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that was you. I didn't realize that was you. Yeah, Syndicate was a really good game. Syndicate, I got all the trophies on that one for PlayStation 3, I think.
So you do like Assassin's Creed a little bit.
Oh, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I was thinking there's actually a PS3 game called Syndicate. That's the whole title, and that was a really good game. It was.
Oh, so you're
It's not
talking
an
about
Assassin's
different
Creed
games, huh?
game. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I didn't know there's a different game also called Syndicate.
yeah.
What is it about?
Uh, it's about being a like in the futuristic dystopian world. You have there are chips in everybody, and everything is controlled by the government. And you were essentially a hacker who goes around taking people's classified chips. It's essentially cyberpunk, but 12 years ago.
Or like Watch Dogs as well, right?
Yep. Yep.
Have you played those games? Cyberpunk was a lot of people were talking about that. I haven't played it yet, but some people weren't happy with it.
Yeah, I haven't played Cyberpunk yet either. I don't usually get the new games right away. I usually just wait for them to come out later. I have a subscription to GameFly, and so I just put my games on a list, and it just they sends me whatever the next one on the list is. Um, what was the other one that it's like?
Cyberpunk and Watch Dogs.
Oh yeah, Watch Dogs. I've definitely played the first two Watch Dogs. I think one of the first or the second
Yeah, I
one.
think the third one just
I
came out.
definitely like the first one the best.
Yeah, and it's cool because they're set like in a specific city, right? I think the first one is set in Chicago, and the second one is set in Seattle. No, San Francisco, I think it is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I kind of like those open world games that you can explore a certain place. I'm playing Uncharted as well now, and even though like I like those games, but it feels like very streamlined in comparison to those open world games. Like I like some direction, but when it's just when you can just move forward, basically, I feel a little bit limiting that it's a little bit limiting these days, even though they're good.
Yeah, I kind of prefer those games because you're allowed to make the gameplay more dynamic in those little areas. Like you can pack a lot more detail into the story into those areas, whereas like the open world games like Assassin's Creed, it's all kind of cookie cutter. A lot of it's the same everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are pros and cons, and I guess you have different levels of refinement. I haven't played it yet, but I want to play Red Dead Redemption 2, and I've heard that that's a really good open world game, and I think it has a deeper level of refinement than the Assassin's Creed games. But so I guess it depends on the. I do like the Assassin's Creed games, but I know what you mean. Yeah, sometimes, and some of them in particular feel a little bit more hollow. But I do
Yeah,
like that.
Odyssey was terrible. I was so bored with that game. I couldn't even finish it.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's a really long game though, right? So to finish it, it's kind of a commitment.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, even the old ones to me, I really like them, but they feel a little bit long because usually it takes me like 20 hours or more to finish them, and uh, that can be a little bit too long. I think Odyssey, it takes you like 40 hours to finish or something like that, or 50 hours, so it's even longer.
I'm pretty used to that kind of a thing because I play the games that take like 300 hours to finish. I'm fine with those. Like
Really?
there are some games that just I don't like the grindy games as much, but games that are skill based and take a long time, I'm totally fine with that. Like Ninja Gaiden is a super hard game because it takes a long time to learn everything going on, but so it takes a long time to beat it, but it's fun. It's worth putting in the effort because it's more about skill than anything. Whereas like MMOs, like World of Warcraft, I didn't like World of Warcraft at all because it was more about grinding, and
Yeah.
grinding kind of sucks.
I can't really stand those games actually. Like MMORPG is really not for me. I mean, it's okay if people want to play them, but it's like I get so bored. Like that's really not for me.
Yep, me neither.
I like RPGs a lot. I'm a big RPG fan, but I like the single player stuff. Like when there's a good story and all that.
Yep.
I don't really like the open-ended RPG that there's no really real direction to it. That it doesn't really appeal to me.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So, man, we're almost done with the winter here, and because we both live in Minnesota. Um, but you moved here from Texas, right? You weren't you didn't live here your whole life. I mean, obviously, neither have I. But I mean, the winters here really suck. So I'm glad we're almost done with the winter.
Yep.
Did you move here from Texas? Was that it? I don't remember.
Yep. I moved from Texas.
Do you miss it? How long ago was that?
I moved here when I was like 8 years old. So that was like
Oh, but
17
that was a
years or
long
something
time
like
ago.
that.
So you basically are from Minnesota.
I guess, yeah, I don't really
When you told me you moved here
care
from
what
Texas, I
location I'm
yeah,
from.
when you told me you moved here from Texas, I didn't think it was okay. So you did grow up here. So you're probably used to it, right?
I guess so.
Um so so are you writing any other books now that you have that first one getting published?
No. I mean, technically, I have like 4 books planned, one in politics, psychology, education, those kinds of things. But I'm only really focused on books that I have a publisher for. That's kind of the main deal. So I only have the 2 that I'm really interested in. The one on morality, which is the one I have the publisher for, and my epistemology one, which is the one I'm trying to get a publisher for.
So the morality one, it's so do you have a specific idea that you advance in that book, or you kind of like cover morality in general? Is it against religious morality? Do you wanna tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So the book is a debate between me and an atheist about which better explains morality, atheism or theism. And we both believe in objective morality. And so I present my model of objective morality in the book. And that's the new thing I add, is that my model. So in that way, yes.
So is objective morality in basically you define that in contrast with uh, religious morality? Is that where you start? Your starting point?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So it's essentially just comparing and contrasting the 2 different models, my model versus the Yahweh model.
Yahweh model? What does that mean?
God of the Old Testament. Yahweh is the name
Oh,
of the
okay.
God of the Old Testament.
Like Jehovah?
Yep.
Same thing, right?
Yep.
Okay. And why do you think your model is better?
Um, for a lot of reasons, but the Christian model, the God model, doesn't work because it's arbitrary. If it's something is only good because God says it, then it's subjectively moral. It's subjectively moral based on the subject of the God. So it's not objectively moral. For it to be objectively moral, it has to be based on some independent standard that isn't opinion or intuition or thought process of some being. So the God model doesn't work as an objective morality is the first reason why it mine's better. But there's also a lot of other things, like it actually corresponds to what we understand to be morality, like drowning babies is wrong, whereas the Christian God, if the Christian God says drowning babies is fine, well then it's fine, which is seems like a problem for a model of objective morality.
So what's the basis for your morality? So the Christian morality, the basis seems to be that God says something, so that must be right. So what's the basis for your morality? Your model of morality?
Undiscovered law of nature, pretty much.
So you think there's a law of
Just a
nature?
undiscovered law of nature. Yep.
What makes you believe that or think that?
The evidence of morality, like if we look at the way morality has changed over time, it seems to follow a pattern in all societies. It seems to be moving in the same direction. And I think that if there if we discover other species on other planets, no matter what kind of life they are, they're also, if they have sufficient intelligence, they will also have the same kind of pattern in morality. So I think there is this uh, thing that all species are going to come to the same conclusions about facts of morality, just like they do about the same facts about science. So if all species come to the same conclusions about something, that's a pretty good indicator that what they're coming to conclusions about is objective and not subjective, because it's independent of any individual species. So I think that's the basis of my hypothesis, is that uh, all the different species all over the universe are all going to come to the same conclusion on these kinds of ideas. And so it's just like science, it's going to be objective, just like science is.
Well, Okay, so what's an example of something that is objective? Are there so do you think there are lots of things that are objective, or just like some core tenets like the ten rules of Tom Jump, for morality, something like that, or is it something like pretty
Yeah.
extensive?
Yeah, I think it's the objective principle that describes what morality is that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. That's what I think the objective standard is.
So that's like the core rule.
Yep.
Can you repeat it? Involuntary
Any
imposition.
in yeah, any involuntary imposition of will is immoral.
Okay. So basically, you can't force people to do stuff that they don't want to do.
Pretty much.
Is that a good simplification?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, in the philosophy club, someone brought up the issue of vaccines today, actually, um, and some people suggested that we should impose that, or we should demand that some people are vaccinated, regardless of what they want to do. So, in your opinion, that would be immoral because um, you're imposing your will on someone who doesn't want to do something that you want them to do.
Yep, it would be immoral. But in our society, some immoral things that we do are justified. Like putting people in prison is obviously an involuntary imposition of will, but we have to do it because if we don't, they're going to cause greater harm to other people. So we have to put them in prison against their will in order to prevent them from harming other people. So in our world, which is not a perfect world, we have to do immoral things in order to protect a bunch of people's wills. We have to impose on a smaller number of people's wills. So we cause the least imposition of will possible, which is immoral, but it's the least immoral thing we can do given our limitations.
So it's almost like a utilitarian perspective in the sense that you're going to do something immoral. So you want to do something immoral to the least amount of people possible, kind of.
Yep. Yep. But then the difference between my model and utilitarianism is that utilitarianism says that that thing that we do that's the least immoral is moral by definition. Whereas I say, no, it's still immoral. It's still wrong to do that. It's just the best we can do given our limitations. So that's the difference between my model and utilitarianism.
Hmm. Well, interesting. Why do you think that's immoral still?
I think that you can,
If
like,
it's the
it's
best
not,
option, right? If it's the best option and it's the only thing that can be done correctly in that situation, like what do you mean by immoral in that case?
so we can say that if you were infinitely powerful, there's something you could do which would be more moral or less bad. And the reason you can't is just because of your subjective limitations. So obviously, the fact that you subjectively don't have the ability to do this greater moral thing doesn't mean that it's not objectively immoral. It just means subjectively that's the best you could do. So if we're talking about an objective morality, we don't want to know what your subjective limitations are. We want to know what the objective standard is. And that objective standard can't just be your subjective limitations. There has to be something else there that's greater, something that can really measure what the true maximum is. That's what the objective part is. So it's like if you imagine a doctor in the 1800s, if you get shot in the leg,
Hmm.
uh, and he's going to cut your leg off, that's the best the doctor can do. But if you imagine a doctor today doing the same thing, like that would clearly be immoral. We would like sue the doctor for cutting your leg off when he didn't have to.
Right.
So if we just keep giving more technological capability to the doctor, what is the justified thing the doctor can do? Well, it's essentially used, given the technology he has, what is the least imposition on your will that he can accomplish given his technology? That's the moral thing to do. It's obviously not the objectively moral thing to do, because the fact that he can only do that given his limitations doesn't mean it's the best that can be done in the universe. There's obviously another standard there. And if you want to know what the objective basis of morality is, you have to know what that the final standard is. What is the standard that you would be held to if you had infinite power, essentially? And that's what we're really wanting to know when we're talking about objective morality, not just our subjective morality of what we can do given our limitations. And so you have to take our limitations out of the equation and know what would be possible if you had essentially infinite power.
So how did you find out that rule, that that cornerstone of your morality system, that an imposition, involuntary imposition of will is the basically the pinnacle of immorality, or the core of immorality? Like how did you come to that conclusion? Because that's not, uh, I don't know. I don't. It's not such a widespread conclusion. I don't think people don't usually think of that as the original sin. Let's put it that way. Unless you're a libertarian or something.
Yeah. So what I did was I looked at moral progress. So if you look over time, there's a pattern in how morals change over time. Like as you gain more resources, you think it's immoral, you give women rights, voting rights, LGBT rights. There's all these kinds of rights that are given and are added to society as society moves forward. And there's a pattern that's present in this moral progress. If you can understand what that pattern is and describe it with some principle, that principle would be your theory of what objective morality is. And that's where I get my model, is I think that the pattern can be described in the principle, in any involuntary imposition of will as immoral. I think that principle describes the pattern in moral progress and gives us a way to predict what the pattern is going to be if we take it to its extreme.
Okay. So all of that follows the pattern that goes back to that core, of voluntary, involuntary imposition of will.
Yep.
Um, how is that so exactly? So how would that describe all of those things that you mentioned? Like, did you mention feminism and racism
Yeah,
and
women's rights, LGBT rights, voting rights. So as we gain more resources, we give people more freedoms to cause less involuntary imposition on their will. So all of the progress and moral progress that we see is a result of a lessening of the involuntary imposition of wills based on the amount of resources that we have.
okay. Okay. Maybe we would have a different perspective though if we were talking about this maybe in the 20th century instead of the 21st century, because the 20th century, stuff like totalitarian governments, they really emerged in the 20th century, and they were essentially the antithesis of your idea of we cannot impose our will on others, right? Because people were, the state pretty much impressed a lot of things on people that they didn't necessarily agree to. So and the 20, and that was, it seemed at the time, the culmination of human history on those places and from those perspectives, right? Communism and fascism. Um, so from those perspectives, yeah, that would definitely clash with your morality. So would you say they were just wrong? They were just misguided in those places?
Yeah. So the idea of the idea of objective morality is it's what's true given the best of all possible worlds. So if we have infinite knowledge, this is what people are going to come to about knowledge. What the moral thing to do is. Obviously, the Soviet Union and Hitler didn't have access to very much knowledge, so clearly their model of morality is going to be wrong. If there is an objective morality, they definitely didn't get it right. They don't. It's like saying that uh, some Pluto or whatever got absolute quantum physics right. Like clearly he didn't have access to enough knowledge to really get a grasp on what the objective morality would be. They were just kind of making it up as they go along. So yeah, they would just be wrong essentially. And I don't think there's any controversy in that. Most of the people who think that there is an objective morality think that Hitler was wrong about what he thought it was.
Well, but we're also talking. I'm not defending Hitler here by any stretch of the imagination, and it's not just Hitler. I mean, well, Hitler was one case, right? I mean, there was a number of, Hitler, but then you also had communism. You also had all sorts of different fascist regimes. So, but all of them had in common,
Well,
and obviously, I
it's
don't
just
want to
like a
live.
scientific fact.
Yeah, I don't want to live under under a
So
totalitarian regime. So, in my opinion, yeah, I mean, they certainly got stuff
it's
wrong.
wait, Bruno, it's like any scientific fact. Like everyone in the past was wrong about science. Pluto was wrong about science. Newton was wrong about gravity. They were all wrong. Their scientific theories are wrong. They didn't have enough knowledge. So there's no difference in morality. If there's an objective morality, just like if there's an objective fact of gravity, everybody in the past was just didn't have the knowledge to get it right, which would make a lot of sense. Like it wouldn't make much sense to say they actually knew what they were talking about in the past or that had any idea what objective morality would be.
That was not so long ago. That was historically speaking, that was just yesterday almost,
Yeah, we keep
I'm
making
not
progress since then.
necessarily
So
disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that that wasn't like that long ago. We're not talking about the Middle Ages here. We're talking about the 20th century. But I understand what you're saying
well,
though. You're
that doesn't really matter. Like we've made progress. Like the scientists 30 years ago were wrong about things we've
Mhm.
discovered since then. So
Right. So
it's
you
not
think
really a big leap.
you think we made a lot of progress since the 20th century in terms of morality.
Y- I think that I have made progress in my theory since then. I
Well, you
think
weren't alive back
they
then.
were incorrect. Yes.
So okay. Are we still going to make more progress? Because you're talking about things, it seems to me, like from what I'm understanding, as if we're right now we're at the cusp, right? We're more evolved than we ever were before. Uh, we're looking into the future, though, like according to your model, just to have an idea, is this are we pretty much at the end of the line, or you think there are some, like does your model propose that we keep advancing in a certain direction, or more or less this is fully realized?
Yeah, we're nowhere near the full realization. We're at the very beginning, just like with science. We haven't made any real significant progress yet. We're still just waking up essentially. So yeah, there's a lot of progress still that we need to make, and we're nowhere near it. What the standard would be yet, it's not even close. So a few things that my model is going to predict is that veganism is going to be correct. Vegetarianism, it's immoral to kill animals. And once we have the resources to do so, it's essentially just going to be outlawed killing animals unnecessarily. So that would be one of the things. Like as we gain enough resources to feed humanity without the need of killing animals or any conscious thing, then it will be illegal to kill animals or any other conscious thing.
Okay, so that's interesting. It's an interesting idea that first that moral rules are objective. Then that's your first um, assertion. Then the second one is that we have been making progress, and now we're more evolved than we ever were before. And then the third one is that even though we have made a lot of progress, we're still kind of in the infancy of this thing, and there's a lot of progress that can still be made. And then you make predictions. That's an interesting perspective. So why do you think so? Just using that example that you just proposed, why exactly do you think that's the case? And so why do you think? And it's interesting the way you phrased it. So vegetarianism or veganism is gonna be right. So it's not right now,
It's
or
going to
do
be
we just
seen
not
as
know it
right. So
yet?
we will understand as a society. Everybody will tend to understand that it's wrong to kill animals, whereas today it's not understood by most people that it's wrong to kill animals.
So
So
you're
it's
saying that.
always going to be right that it's always going to be wrong to kill any conscious thing ever for any reason. But as a society, our moral progress will be able to understand and see that as a society.
Mhm. So basically, what you're saying is that it's already wrong. It's just that people don't realize it, and people will start realizing it. Just like a scientific fact is the case, even though we don't grasp it.
Yep, exactly. That's what objective morality means. It's a fact just like any other scientific fact, and it's subjective like any scientific fact.
So why do you believe that that is the case about vegetarianism or just or veganism, like you said?
It's the conclusion of the evidence. So if my model is correct that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral, and moral progress follows the pattern that as we gain resources, we
Hmm.
allow as much freedom of will as possible, given our limitation of our resources, then as we have enough resources to feed humanity without killing animals, then we will begin to see it as immoral to kill them and impose on their will involuntarily. So it's the conclusion of the model is that if this principle is correct, then this is what how society will change in the future.
So that's interesting because at that point you're applying your rule is not just about humans; it's about other creatures as well, right?
Yep, all conscious things, anything that has consciousness.
What's consciousness? What do you mean by that?
Self-awareness, qualia, lots of different words you could use for it, but it's just any kind of conscious experience is
Well, but
consciousness.
animals, I'm not so sure animals are have consciousness as such.
I'm not sure what you mean because
That's why I'm
consciousness is
asking you
just
about the consciousness.
so consciousness just means you have essentially there is something that it's like to be you. So bats have consciousness, worms have worms may or may not. Most
Okay.
insects probably have consciousness. Pretty much all mammals have consciousness. Uh, so pretty much everything has consciousness that has a brain.
I'm not so sure about that. Like you said it yourself, like a worm. I mean, they have a brain, right? I mean, I'm not expert in worm biology, but I
Um,
imagine they have a brain. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're not
Not really.
conscious. Huh?
Yeah, I agree. Worms probably are not conscious, but I'm definitely sure like all mammals are conscious.
Okay. No, I mean, I'm not. I don't intend to disagree with you on this. I'm just trying to figure out like what you mean by consciousness. Um,
It's kind of like self-awareness. Like if you have thoughts, you have an
I don't think.
experience of the world.
Yeah, I understand. I think that's like a very fuzzy concept as well, but I understand like what you mean. Um, because I don't think a deer really knows. He's a deer. Like I don't think they have that
Sure,
level.
but
Just
that's
like
self-awareness is something more than consciousness. Self-awareness is having consciousness and having the processing power to analyze that conscious experience and give labels to it. None of that matters. Consciousness is just the experience. So if you have an experience, you have consciousness.
well, but in that case, that can be a little bit tricky because at that point, yeah, it might be a little bit different. It might be difficult to separate the experience of the worm from the experience of the deer, because they're both
Well,
alive.
not really, because the worm probably doesn't have experience. Because alive doesn't mean conscious. To have consciousness, you need to have a brain of sufficient capacity to actually do some serious processing.
Okay, let's
It's
assume
got to
there's
be. It's a function.
some sort of continuum there, which is probably the case. Um, the more intelligent, the more conscious you become.
Well,
Um,
it's not a continuum. Consciousness is literally a process produced by the brain. So it's a specific process. You need to have the specific process produced, like a heart. There's not like a continuum of heart. If you either have a heart or you don't have a heart. So
yes, but it's not the
there is a
same.
specific part or function in the brain that produces consciousness.
Um, okay. Well, if you, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, what's your source for that?
Source for because there are many brains that don't produce consciousness, like a dead brain doesn't produce consciousness.
Well, I think there's a considerable degree of uncertainty about Well, just defining consciousness is very difficult, but also it's hard to say like the like the degree to which one is conscious. Like yeah, obviously humans are conscious, like you are as conscious as I am, and vice versa, and pretty much any other person in the planet. But a chimpanzee, now that starts getting trickier, also because we don't know exactly what how a chimpanzee thinks, so we need to figure it out. But a chimpanzee, on in turn, doesn't think in the same way that a deer thinks. You know, like they're clearly more advanced, more evolved, and the way in which a chimpanzee is conscious is not the same as the way a deer is conscious. You know, unless you're talking about consciousness is a very different thing than I am talking about. That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I've read some things about, you know, chimpanzees understand that they are chimpanzee, or that they are creatures like in a way that deers do not. It does, there is a continuum there, like that's what I mean, you know, like animals, they're not all the same in that sense. Like elephants are not the same as cows. You know, elephants have a much higher degree of self-awareness, like you said. Um,
Well, the degree of self-awareness makes zero difference here. If you have any experience in a brain, you're conscious. That's all it means. So it's
well,
just qualia. If you just
but
Google qualia, Stanford Encyclopedia,
right.
you can
So
just
that's what you mean
Google
by
it.
consciousness. Basically, you have a brain and you exist.
Yep. Just thought patterns. If you have an experience of existing, then yes. So there are brains that don't have consciousness, like people who are brain dead. But if you, yeah, if you have a brain and you have some conscious experience, then yeah, you have consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, from your definition, I mean, I think that would probably apply to worms and insects and any pretty much any living thing. Um,
It's possible, but probably not.
well,
Most
why not?
likely
Why not?
not, because they don't seem to have a sufficiently powerful enough brain to be able to process those things.
But what
Like
thing?
it's a
Like
specific
you're
function
just,
of the brain.
but you're
It's not
just
just
saying
any brain.
about they just exist. Like you're not saying that they're doing anything else, right? In
No,
your
they have to
definition.
experience existing. So it's the
What does that
experience
mean?
is a process of the brain.
Like
Qualia, like literally you see colors right now. Like you see colors, you
yeah.
experience thoughts, you can feel them.
Uh-huh.
That's what it means. If you don't see colors, if you don't have a qualia experience, then you don't experience anything. So bacteria don't have an experience. They react, but they don't have an experience. They don't see colors. They
Mhm.
don't hear sounds. They don't touch and feel things. They just have no experience to exist, even though they do exist.
Mhm.
Consciousness is the experience of existing.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of see what you mean. I do think there's a continuum. At least that's my sense, because I don't think there's a point in which there's a switch that, oh, from this point on, you know, someone is conscious, or something is conscious, and before that, just before that in evolution, it wasn't conscious. I'm not really sure how that would work, because I do think it's the way evolution works. I mean, by definition, is you know, it's gradual, so it's not like something is and or something is not and then it is, like right after that. I mean, it doesn't, I don't think it really works like that. But then again, I'm not a expert biologist, so it's hard to say.
Well, there are things like mitochondria is a thing, and it wasn't. There's not a there's no such thing as mitochondria, and then there was such thing as mitochondria. There was no such thing as hearts, and then there was such a thing as hearts. So every piece of biology had a beginning, a first thing. Uh, so I'm not sure what you mean by that. So yeah, everything happens in stages, but those stages do create unique things all the time, and those unique
Right.
things have a beginning.
Yeah. No, I understand your point of view. I don't think that probably applies to conscious, but I might be wrong, and you might be right. I think that also
Well, do you
it's
think
like, well, I think it's
do
a,
you think rocks have consciousness?
well, no, it's not a living thing. It's a different kind of
Do you think
substance,
bacteria have consciousness?
different kind of creature altogether. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think bacteria, like I think like, and I'm trying to use the word in the way that you're using it, because I'm trying to understand what you're saying, like, and I'm trying to understand like your theory. And I mean, the way I usually use consciousness is not even like self-awareness is the way I understand consciousness is kind of like a condition, but it's just semantics. I mean, I just it's okay. I guess it's okay to use it in a different way. I don't think there's I don't I don't know. I guess in a dictionary somewhere there's a specific definition, but I think it's a pretty fuzzy term, and I've seen it used in different ways. So I think for sure there are a number of different ways in which people can use the term. But you're using the term in more like some, like you said, like you're describing, like something's alive and is experiencing reality. So I'm trying to figure out like what where that starts. Um, but like I said, I mean, without having like a definitive biological proof, I mean, it's uh, yeah, I can't really say, you know. I just
Yeah, I
imagine
mean,
like from
we
my
don't.
perspective,
We
there's
obviously
some
don't
sort of
know where it starts.
what?
We obviously don't know where it starts. We don't know what the smallest thing with consciousness is, but we don't need
Yeah.
to. Like, morality applies to whatever has consciousness, regardless of whether or not we know what it is.
Okay. Well, that yeah, that's a good way to go about it. Um. Okay. So your model applies to all those things, even if they're not human.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. But the thing is, if you're right, isn't it weird that humans as hunter gatherers naturally hunt animals, and that other animals that are in a um, anterior degree of evolution, you know, like chimpanzees, they kill other animals to eat, or obviously carnivores. That's their whole
No.
nature. I
No, that
mean,
would make
because
perfect sense. Like, I don't.
no, what I mean is like if they kill in order to eat, and that's moral, or maybe it's not moral. That's also what I'm asking you. Why
Yeah,
would
it would definitely be immoral
it would be immoral from them to do for them to do that,
to kill things. Yes.
even if they're carnivores and that's in their very nature?
Yes. Like, it's the fact that it's their nature wouldn't make it moral. That would be a appeal to nature fallacy. The fact that something is natural doesn't mean it's good.
Well, that's what they're designed for.
Same thing. So the fact that they're a part of nature doesn't mean that they're good. So the fact that something is natural or occurs does not make it good just because it happens to occur that way. Appeal to nature fallacy.
Well, I would argue that it's not good and it's not bad. I think morality has no bearing on it. You know, like a lion does not understand and is not included from my perspective. You know, obviously we're just talking here. I think it's an interesting point of view, the one you're proposing, but I just can't see, like, from my point of view, how what a lion does. If you go into a lion's cage and the lion eats you because the lion is hungry, I don't really understand how that would be a good thing for the lion to do that, or a bad thing for the lion to do that from the lion's
Yeah,
perspective.
it's
Obviously
not
for you it's
the
not a good
lion
thing.
doesn't matter. So the lion isn't what's immoral. It's nature is what's immoral. So nature itself, a nature that allows a lion to kill you would be immoral. So that world is immoral compared to a different world that didn't have where it wasn't possible for a lion to eat you. It's not the lion's fault. The lion isn't the thing that's immoral. It's the world itself that is immoral in that case.
So you're saying that nature is immoral?
Absolutely.
Hmm. Okay, nature is immoral. um so what when you say immoral, are you working with the assumption that there's a good and a bad? Is that what you mean by it? There's good and evil?
I guess so. I mean, those would just be synonymous with moral and immoral. Good and bad are synonymous with
Yeah, I'm
moral
just
and
trying to
immoral. So,
understand like what
sort of
you're saying. Yeah, so it's like good and evil. Okay, and where does that come from? Like the notion of
law
that
of
there is a
nature.
good and the notion that there is an evil. Like, where does that come
Law
from?
of nature. It's just a law of nature, like any physical law of nature.
Well, but you're saying that nature is immoral. So how can that be law of nature? Because nature, how can something be law of nature that makes nature evil?
It's just a measurement. So it's like you can say the universe has some distance, and distance obviously comes from the property of the universe. The fact that it created distance doesn't mean it is like all distance. It doesn't have a distance of infinite. It has a very particular distance. So the fact that nature has some properties that it is come from nature itself doesn't mean that it has to be the maximum of those properties. Like there's obviously stuff that aren't, that's like there's stars out there and they occupy some portion of space but not all space, and there are things that come that exist outside of space time. So the fact that it's a part of nature doesn't mean that nature has to be infinite of that thing. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay. So you're saying that nature is only a part of the universe is bigger. Is that what you're saying?
No, nature is everything, but
Yeah.
the fact that nature is everything doesn't mean that energy is literally maximized everywhere. Like obviously there are stars where there's a lot of energy here, and there's black holes where there's not a lot of energy there. So you can have a maximized location with lots of it. Like you can have a very moral part of the universe and a very immoral part of the universe. So just like you can have, there's parts of the universe with lots of energy and parts of the universe with little energy. So I don't understand why you would think that because the universe created morality that there can't be variations in that.
Well, I think that it's like to me like from my perspective, like I'm very interested in what you're saying. Like I think it's an interesting point of view, but from my perspective, it's a little bit odd that we would say that we would attribute like those qualities of good or evil to nature in the first place. I mean, that's an odd thing for me. Like for me, it's odd. I mean, those are not qualities that I personally usually think about something that you can attribute to nature. Not to a
Right, most people
lion, let
don't, and
alone nature
that's
itself. You know. Um,
right. Most people feel that way, that morality is attributed to agents, but that's clearly wrong because we don't have free will. Like everything we do is determined. And so to apply morality to a determined agent is no different than applying morality to a rock. Like our actions are determined by our brain state, just like the rocks are determined by physics. So to say that morality applies to agents when there aren't any, there's no such thing as a free agent, doesn't make any sense. So the way we apply morality to people is exactly the same way I'm applying morality to the lion or the rocks or the universe. It doesn't seem to be like there's any contradiction there. It's just this, people have this intuitive pull that you have to have consciousness to be moral, which doesn't seem to work, because if morality applies to whether or not your actions are harming someone else or whether or not you could have done otherwise, it's we're no different than nature itself, no different than rocks or lions.
Well, I think we're very different. I think that free will does exist. I mean, I've heard that argument about free will, but I mean, when people say that free will doesn't exist, I really like I've heard the argument and I'm just not convinced by it. But let's kind of like let's like kind of like a can of worms. But just the idea of like the universe having a moral value, like nature being either good or evil. um like, why do you think that's something that we can attribute to nature? Because it seems to me like that's us, we're creating that, those qualities. Like, so for us to attribute that to nature itself, um like there's a leap there. Like, I'm not really sure how we would, like, why do you think we should take that leap? Like, how, in your mind, or in your theory I should say, um how do you, what makes you think that you can attribute those qualities to everything, not just to you, or not just to conscious beings that have the property of choice? You can attribute that to something that really does not choose, nature. And you're saying, like, I understand that you're saying, oh, we don't choose just like nature, but I don't know, it's a little bit strange to conceive something like nature that has clearly an order of things. Lions are carnivore; they're designed to kill. That's what they're designed for. They're designed to kill prey in order to subsist, right? And then you're saying, well, but that's an evil system. Um, I mean, I mean, you have a whole model, so it does make sense to you, I'm sure. But to me, I'm having trouble like making that leap.
Yeah, so the first thing you'd have to look into free will and realize that it's impossible. Like it's not possible for us to have libertarian free will. We're all going to be completely determined by our brains or by quantum randomness. Those are the only two options. And so any action we do which we think is moral is no more or less moral than a lion eating a gazelle. There's no difference there. And once you understand that, then you have to realize that morality really as a concept only applies to determined things in the universe or random things in the universe. And so if you want to, you can either say there is no such thing as morality because you need the ability to choose otherwise, or you have to change your understanding of morality to reflect reality and realize that it doesn't have anything to do with choices and the ability to choose to do otherwise.
Okay. So why do you attribute, just going back to the whole nature thing, because and we said we're going to do this for an hour, so I mean, just going in circles about the free will thing doesn't really make sense, unless we're willing to stay like another hour at least. But but why, and we can expand on this in a different, in a further engagement in another podcast. But just kind of like to start wrapping it up. How do you, like, why do you think like morality, or just to make it a little bit more clear, this idea that you cannot impose your will on anything, and that you go as far as like taking that and saying this is also true for nature. Nature is being immoral when it imposes its will on things, so like, where does that idea, where did you come up with that idea that imposing something on something else, that's somehow evil, or like, in your opinion, that's evil, in contrast to something that is good, which is not imposing something? Like, how did
That's
that start?
the looking at the evidence. So of moral progress, if we plot out the pattern in moral progress and we try to describe that pattern with a principle, the principle that I describe that pattern with is any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. That seems to be the pattern in moral progress where it's leading to. And I just take that to its extreme and say, what would this pattern continue to look like in a billion years, a trillion years, whatever? And if we can take it to its extreme, this principle seems to be what it's describing. It seems to be when we look at the pattern in everything that's changed across moral progress, women's rights, LGBT rights, ending slavery, ending the death penalty, veganism, all of the things that we see in today's present and past, if we just plot all those out on a line graph, draw a line between them and say what principle describes these things, the principle is any involuntary imposition of will is immoral, is the principle or the conclusion of the principle that is described by the progress we've seen in morality over human history.
Yeah, well, fair enough. It's yeah, it's fair enough to make that assumption. I'm not really sure I would make that assumption, but it's as good a,
Well, it's
as
not
good a place as
really
any
an
other
assumption.
to start. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it's essentially that's right. It's a hypothesis. So what you say is you look at the evidence, you make a hypothesis that seems to describe the evidence. So I'm not assuming anything. It's a hypothesis.
Yeah,
Saying
right.
this seems to
Hypothesis.
follow the pattern.
Yeah. I mean, personally, my hypothesis that I would start with, as far as like my view of morality, is that, yeah, there's really no, I mean, there's really no such thing as good and evil in absolute terms. I mean, I think that's and obviously there are many ethical systems that align with with this assumption, and you can take it to a number of different places, and who knows what really the truth is. um, it's fun to talk about it for sure. um, but yeah, man,
Sure.
thank you for taking the time to go through all of this with me. And
Sure.
I really
Anytime.
I really appreciate it, Tom. Hope you had a good time. But do you want to say something else before we end the podcast, and then hopefully we can talk a little bit more, like in private. But um, just
No, that's good. Good talking with you. Good to chat with you after so long.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna end this. Thank you for watching, guys.